Welcome to the DeFi Standard. This is Patty XRP, and today we are going to break down some of the architecture behind the Polkadot Network. And before I get into this, just want to say nothing here is financial advice. This is all for educational purposes, and I am most definitely not a financial advisor. So, with that out of the way, let's kind of dive in here. So to start us off, Polkadot is basically a massive interoperability protocol that is utilizing a nominated proof of stake consensus and heterogeneously sharded sidechains. So that just means that some of the computations are done in parallel to the main net of Polkadot, which is going to be called the relay chain. And let's head over to our screen kind of to see what the architecture looks like in a infographic. So right here you can see the relay chain, which this is the Polkadot mainnet. And with that, you'll have these parachains, bridges, or also they can be formed as parathreads, which we'll get into all of those that connect to the relay chain. What's important to note about this relay chain is it's meant to be kept lean and efficient and fast. So a lot of stuff is not going on through this relay chain. Mainly, it's used for consensus and security, staking, governance, things like that. So what we'll have here is validators will be running on the Polkadot relay chain, and then you'll have individuals that are nominators, and nominators will be DOT token holders, which is the native asset of Polkadot. And basically, they can stake their DOT with these validators to signal to the rest of the network that I think this is a good validator, a beneficial actor to the network. And the inflation of the DOT token is paid back to validators that are included in the active validator set, which are the ones that are actually, ordering transactions, verifying what happens on these parachains, state changes with other blockchains. They verify and order all of that stuff for the entire connected ecosystem. And additionally, with these parachains that we are kind of addressing here, which is really one of the biggest things about Polkadot, and they are going to be basically mini blockchains that operate in parallel to the relay chain. So the beauty of having this relay chain with, just very minimal things happening there to allow for the entire ecosystem to scale and have a shared security model is that you can have these side blockchains called parachains, which connect back to the relay chain. And they're also able to message and communicate with other parachains that are connected to the relay chain. So that's a really another powerful aspect. But what it kind of allows is these parachains to be created that specialize for certain things. So you may have a strictly DeFi parachain, or you could have a privacy parachain, or maybe a data storage parachain. I see projects that are trying to work with Internet of Things on Polkadot and maybe smart cities. So, I mean, you could even have a network of cars that, have all the sensors and stuff on them, communicating and sharing data via their own parachain in the future. That's highly speculative, but I'm just saying, long term, who knows what these parachains could be used for. And, with them being heterogeneously sharded, which, just basically means they can kind of have some of their own I guess, settings that they want to have. So, like, transaction fees could be different, gas fees can be different, the governance could be different, just all kinds of different things. And these parachains present an interesting opportunity to anybody that is a DOT token holder. So, once they go live on the Polkadot network, which from what I can tell is looking like end of September, second half of September, maybe sometime in October. It's all dependent on how all the Canary versions of them go on Kusama network, which that is ongoing. And once they meet some thresholds that they feel safe launching them on Polkadot, they'll do that. So for a project to get a parachain slot on Polkadot, you basically have to have enough DOT tokens bonded behind the project that it outbids every other project vying for that parachain slot. And these projects will get a lease term that they specify. So I believe it's somewhere from 6 months to 2 years are the lease terms. And what they'll do is, we may see a parachain that has a native asset, and for them to try and get dot holders to bond their token behind them, they would probably offer them some kind of boosted rewards on their parachain or a share of the distribution of their native asset. And, this is kind of to compensate any of the dot holders that are bonding their tokens behind a parachain for, missing out on the opportunity cost of using their dot elsewhere. So that could be within consensus via validator staking and things like that. You get a yield on a yearly basis that's being delivered, daily for the rewards. And you're missing out on those now because you're locking up your dot and they're being used to basically back this parachain project. So, that'll kind of create competition between these parachains to offer their users that are going to, bond tokens behind them. You got to give them something in return. So we'll see these parachains competing with each other. And especially since their terms are fixed or, they're not forever, basically, they're not in perpetuity. Now you're going to have to continually compete over time to keep your project in a parachain slot. Now, what we may see is some projects that are large enough, they may, want to start as a parachain and take time before they get their whole decentralization figured out so they can kind of bootstrap off the relay chain's decentralization until they decide to become their own independent blockchain, at which point they can have their own consensus and all that and be connected back to the relay chain with a bridge. So I think that kind of covers really what parachains are. I think I'm most excited to see how the specialization develops. It allows, computational power that would have been done on like layer one of Ethereum to scale parallel via Polkadot. And so, provide interesting opportunities and different ways to kind of organize projects. Like you could eventually build, or somebody could, a parachain project and they take up a parachain slot that uses functionality from like three different parachains within it. So the composability, I think there's a high likelihood that it can be used within the Polkadot ecosystem. Now, with that, since it is kind of costly, and you need to be kind of big enough to get a parachain slot, some projects maybe they're just solving like a $50 million problem, which is still pretty significant, but probably not enough for them to get enough backing behind their parachain and to get one of these slots. So what they could be part of instead is a parathread. So a parathread occupies a parachain slot. However, it'll have multiple different projects on them with their own collators, and collators are people or entities that basically batch all the transactions and the state changes from a parachain and then send it to the relay chain so it can be included and ordered in consensus. Um, so with these parathreads, basically on a block by block basis, they are going to be putting up bids in fees with the dot token in order to basically include, one of their blocks in the relay chain so that it can be recorded for the entire network. Now, maybe these projects don't really need to update their blockchain more than an hour per day, or maybe, twice a day or something like that. So they really don't need to be occupying an entire parachain slot to handle all that. They could just kind of bid a couple times a day to get their blocks included in the Polkadot relay chain. So that's something for smaller projects to get involved in, and it'll be kind of competition based, and they'll just have to pay a fixed fee up front that they can get back when they exit their term for one of these parathread spots. But it's just another way to kind of, I guess, make these parachain slots more equitable to all different types of projects. And then finally, the other kind of thing that can occupy one of these parachain slots is going to be bridges. And so this is basically going to be for interoperability between two sovereign blockchains. So here you can see Ethereum is used as an example. There's projects actively working on building bridges to Ethereum and Bitcoin via, Polkadot. And bridges could be within a parachain that's already occupied by a project, or it can be a parachain slot that is only for that bridge and not much else. Or maybe, you could see a bridge created and then financial products built around that bridge for sending assets back and forth between two different blockchain networks. And so, one thing that I think is really interesting here, and especially since it's mentioned in the Flare white paper, and we brought this up before, but we see Flare kind of has their own interoperability with the F asset system, and they're able to more easily connect with blockchains based on the state connector system technology. So you could kind of see Flare, it's connecting with XRPL, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Stellar, which are older, legacy blockchains, and instead of Polkadot, a project having to build out the technology to connect to each individual one of those blockchains, you could see maybe a Polkadot bridge that's built to the Flare network and allows all the assets that are included in the Flare network to be utilized on Polkadot and the assets on Polkadot to be utilized on Flare network. So that's something I could see as very, very beneficial in the long run. Additionally, since these bridges would kind of do good for the entire Polkadot ecosystem, they kind of refer to them as common good parachain slots, which are decided on via governance rather than the crowd loan methodology that we were talking about earlier with auctions and things of that nature. And so for the last part of this, I just kind of wanted to highlight how large the Polkadot ecosystem is. So this is from a Twitter account called Polka Project. They, just aggregate and keep a bunch of information on everything that's going on with Polkadot. You can see these are all the wallets that are integrated, all the different kind of infrastructure projects, the block explorers that they have. You can see some bridges built out, stuff launching on Kusama, which is the Canary Network, DeFi, Internet of Things, oracles. So some big projects that are going to be involved are like Chainlink, Balancer, Band Protocol, Sushi Swap's going to be involved on Polkadot. So just a lot of things going on, and hopefully with how big this is, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on with Polkadot. And some of these parachains, interestingly enough, are going to be spots for even more projects to launch on top of a parachain, rather than each individual project trying to find its own, have its own parachain. You could have a parachain that creates a bunch of stuff that makes it easy to deploy projects on it. And then you see people come in and develop dApps on top of that parachain. So, I mean, some of these parachains may, turn into rather large blockchain ecosystems that maybe will rival other layer ones. We'll have to see on that, especially since they're not even out yet. But there's a lot of development going on here. And for the last part, I guess, after that, so that kind of wraps up the educational portion of this broadcast. But Mickey and I are going to start looking into a lot of the parachain projects that will possibly win their auctions on Polkadot first, because those will be some of the first opportunities to earn new assets if you're a DOT token holder. And we'll be kind of putting those out over the next couple of weeks, just so you guys can get a taste of what's going on there. Also, it's stuff we can compare back to Flare Network and see, oh, is this something that could be beneficial on Flare in the future, or is there a reason to create a bridge here with Flare? So in Polkadot. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good one. This was the DeFi Standard. I'm Patty XRP, and I am out.